I run an AI agency, which basically means I'm inside Claude most of my working day. Client systems, content, the actual business, all of it runs through Claude. So this is the full guide I wish I had when I started. Every feature worth knowing, and more importantly, how you combine them into workflows that actually do something. A quick note before we start, most of these examples I'll use are made up to keep things simple, but they're the kind of thing that I genuinely use Claude for every day. We'll get you set up first, then proper prompting, then how to feed Claude and create with it, then how to build a real system and the agentic tools at the end. A quick word on pricing first. Claude probably has the best free plan any model has right now, and you can genuinely run a lot of your work on it. But if you use AI properly for work, the paid plan pays for itself fast. The $20 a month pro plan is plenty for most people. You only need to move up when you start leaning on Cowork and Claude Code, which we'll get into at the end. Once you're in, this is the interface. Prompt box in the middle, file uploads on the left, model selector on the right. The left panel opens up to your past chats, plus projects, skills, and artifacts, which are the good stuff we'll come back to. Now I'm going to go through something that most guides say for the very end of their videos, the models. I'd rather get it out of the way so that you're not guessing the whole video. Opus is the most powerful one. Use it for complex work, proper reasoning, anything where quality matters more than the speed. It's slower, but it uses more tokens. Sonnet is much faster, but it is still really capable, especially with extended thinking turned on. That's my default for almost everything. Haiku is the fastest one, but it's definitely the weakest. Honestly, I never touch it. So Sonnet with extended thinking day to day, Opus when I'm building something serious, and that's it. Most people type a question in, get a generic answer back, and assume Claude isn't that clever. But it's almost always the prompt and not the model. So here's the formula that I basically put on everything. I call it ICC, instructions, context, and constraints. Instructions are the task, the actual thing that you want done. Context is everything around it, so your role, your goal, your background, anything else relevant. Always lean towards more. And constraints are the rules, the tone, the length, the format, and an example of what good looks like if you've got one. The order doesn't really matter as long as it's all in there. So a bad prompt would be, write me a cold email to land new agency clients. The output's fine, but it's generic. So as you can see, it's giving me a generic response with no real relation to what we're actually trying to achieve. It's also used its own assumptions that aren't even relevant to us. So now, if we do the same thing but with ICC, the same instruction, but I add context that I run an AI agency, targeting small e-commerce brands, and my angle is saving them hours on repetitive work. Then constraints, under 100 words, casual, one clear call to book a call, and give me 3 subject line options. So as we can see, it said, hi, name, I help e-commerce brands like yours automate the stuff that eats your week. Customer support replies, order updates, stock reports. Most of my clients get back 5 to 10 hours every week within the first month. New tools to learn, no big tech overhaul. Would you be up for a 15-minute call to see if it'd be worth it for you? So now it's actually usable, specific to my offer, my audience, and my tone. And there's a subject line in there that I genuinely send off. But the first output is rarely perfect. The best results come from testing Claude like a collaborator, going back and forth with Claude until it's right. And that brings me to the best prompting tip I've ever picked up. Even with ICC, you'll leave out things you don't think to mention. So at the end of any prompt, just add, ask me anything you need to know first to do this properly. I call it a context interview. Claude knows what it's missing better than you do, so it comes back with questions. So as we can see, what's your main value proposition? What's the #1 result you get for clients? What's your ideal target in this email? And what's your tone preference? And then it's followed up confirming specific metrics to include. So you answer and the next version is miles better because it's now built around your actual situation rather than what you happen to type. So hi, first name. Most e-commerce founders I speak to are spending 15 hours a week on operational tasks that could be fully automated. Things like order routing, inventory updates, customer support triage, and post-purchase follow-ups. I run an AI automation agency that helps small e-commerce brands reclaim that time. Our clients typically free up around 15 hours per week within the first 30 days without adding headcount. I'd love to show you what that could look like for your business. Would you be open to a 15-minute call this week or next? And then signed off with my name. Once you combine ICC with context interview, your first usable output is almost always there. Honestly, that is the single biggest upgrade you can make to how you prompt today. One more thing on prompting before we move on. I separate searching from answering. So ground first and ask second. So say I've got a discovery call with a client in an industry that I don't know well, like a dental practice. First, I'll tell Claude to research the common operational bottlenecks in that industry and get fully up to date. So you can see here, I've asked it to do research on the most common operational bottlenecks and time drains for dental practices in the UK and given a few specific areas to focus on. And Claude has now given me a full detailed breakdown of live and up-to-date bottlenecks and then given me a clear guidance on where AI can realistically help them. Then I ask it to help me prep questions for the call, because it's grounded in that context first. Every answer after is sharper. Most people skip this and it just becomes a big mess. So now you can see that Claude has given me 8 different discovery questions directly from the research it conducted before, and all designed to get a dental practice owner to talk candidly rather than just responding with yeses and nos. You can drop almost anything into Claude to work from. PDFs, spreadsheets, images, contracts, screenshots. It reads it, summarizes it, and pulls out what matters. So say I'm actually onboarding that e-commerce client. I'll screenshot a competitor's landing page, drop it in, and ask Claude to break down the messaging and structure. So what's working, what isn't, any patterns there are. And now you can see I've got a full page structure, what's working with the landing page, what isn't working, patterns worth noting for my build, and the core issue that we can focus on improving. Then what I can do is export the client's last 90 days of ad and lead data as a CSV, drop that in, and ask it to analyze the performance and visualize the key metrics. So now Claude has broken down the data for me into 3 key phases and drawn out every single metric useful to our situation. And it didn't just give me a wall of text, it built a full dashboard. It just picks whatever format gets the information across the best way, which leads nicely into the next bit. A quick one on web search. It's under the plus button and it's on by default. Make sure you leave it on, but it won't always use it automatically. When it's obvious, it will. When it isn't, you'll need to tell it to search the web in your prompt. So it's worth remembering that. Now this is where Claude stops being a chatbot and starts being a build tool. Artifacts. Artifacts are interactive, standalone thing Claude builds in a side panel next to your chat. So you can keep refining them without actually losing them in your scroll. So here's a few I built in one prompt each for this video. A lead tracking dashboard for a client. Here you can see it's built a fully interactive and well-designed dashboard which I'm able to easily navigate through, add new leads and keep track of all of the leads coming in. I've done a little ROI calculator I use on sales calls. This one's simple but it's super useful, and you can see that I'm able to easily change the hours spent and the hourly cost and get immediate insights on the total results. And then a landing page mock-up for a pitch. And as you can see, a simple prompt and I've got a solid design website ready to build on top of, so I can add my product photos and deploy it as soon as I'm ready. And then an interactive onboarding flowchart. The range is genuinely insane. You describe what you want and it builds a working version in seconds. The other big one is writing. Ask Claude to open an artifact and you get your document on the right and the chat on the left. So you can edit while seeing the whole thing as it's progressing. And if it doesn't build an artifact when you expect one, just say, make this an artifact. Now this is a newer one that most people haven't clocked onto yet. Inline visualisations. Anthropic shipped these earlier this year. When a chart or a diagram explains something better than text, Claude just builds one inside the chat. And then you can click it, you can swap the chart type, and you can update it live. So if I research a marketing framework, instead of a wall of text, Claude breaks it into clickable tabs that I can actually move through. So here I've got a full breakdown of this marketing framework broken into clickable tabs, attention, interest, desire, and action. It's drawn out useful tactics we can use, real-world examples, key metrics to track, and the typical drop-off points within the e-commerce industry. Much easier to take in than a giant block of text. On top of that, Claude creates actionable downloadable files. So Excel, Word, PowerPoint, PDF, real formats with working formulas and proper formatting. And this used to only be in the paid plan, but it's completely free for everyone now. So say I've got a folder of voice memos and screenshots of content ideas. I'll drop them in and ask Claude to turn it into a structured content calendar. And then you can see here that Claude has built me a full content calendar to last me 4 weeks, all structured around the idea and brain dumps that I gave it. Or I'll have it build out a full client proposal as a Word doc or a pitch deck as a PowerPoint, all ready to send. So the last one in this block of features, deep research. Instead of one search, Claude works agentically. It plans, searches, builds on what it finds, and then adapts as it goes. So before building an AI strategy for a client, I'll ask it to research the competitor landscape properly. So it made a plan first, it ran loads of searches that built on each other, it went to over 150 sources, it took a few minutes and then gave me a full-cited document. And you can see the level of detail it's gone into. Work that would normally take hours is just done in minutes. And it's all cited so you can go and check everything. And this is genuinely one of the best features in here. But here's where things shift. Everything so far has just been in one chat at a time. This next part is about building something that remembers and connects to your tools. Projects are the single biggest upgrade that you can make. They're self-contained workspaces with their own memory, instructions, and files. And this is the right moment to flag a common bit of advice that's actually wrong. People tell you to fill in the tell Claude about yourself fields in settings. But if you use Claude across different work, no single instruction fits to everything, and you get odd results. So make sure you leave those blank. You set instructions per project instead, which is far better because they only apply in the right context. The best candidates for this are anywhere you reuse the same material. So I've got a new project for every client and then one for my content. All you do is click new project, name it, then go into the instructions and add the context, the tone, and the rules for that work. Then we have project files. Upload anything that you want Claude to permanently know. Brand guidelines, past work to match, examples, SOPs. Once that's set, every chat in that project starts with the full context. So no re-uploading, no re-explaining. It's a massive time saver. But the projects have a limit. They remember things, they don't do things. That's what skills are for. Skills are the most underrated feature in Claude. They're workflows that you build once and Claude pulls them in automatically when they're relevant. Almost think of them as little expertise packages. They teach Claude to do a very specific job in the same way every single time. So we have two types: Anthropic's own skills, which just work in the background, and custom ones that you build yourself. You can make a skill for almost any repeatable process. So writing proposals in your format, building client reports, reviewing content, writing in a specific brand voice maybe, and building one is simple. You tell Claude what you want and it interviews you about the workflow. Upload an example of the output if you've got one. Claude builds the workflow, then gives you a button to save it straight into your skills. Another way I make them, if I've gone back and forth with Claude on something and finally got it right, I'll just ask it to turn that into a skill. So a real example of this, I've got a skill for scripting my content. I draft the thing myself, I paste it into my content project, and just say critique this using the script critique skill. And as you can see, it gives me a full breakdown of problems with my script, analyzes the hooks, looks at the retention breakdown, checks my CTA, and then assesses my voice against the rules it knows to follow. So it doesn't rewrite everything, it just tells me where to sharpen it. And that one skill saves me hours every week. And any process you repeat is a candidate for the same thing. So projects are reusable knowledge, skills are reusable processes. Put them together and Claude starts behaving like a system and not a chatbot. Now connectors are what gives Claude access to other apps. Depending on what you allow it to do, it can read your files, pull documents, update records, and run tasks, all from the chat. So your Google Drive, Calendar, Slack, Notion, GitHub, loads of them. Whatever you actually use, just plug it in. So one that I lean on, after I have a client call, I'll ask Claude to pull the notes from that meeting and start turning them into actionable steps. So you can see Claude has gone ahead and accessed my Google Drive where all of my notes live. It's found the notes from my most recent discovery call and given me 7 action items in there. It's told me who needs to handle them and then given me a timeline on each task. Once your connectors are in, Claude basically becomes the control center for your whole workflow. Another quick flag on a new feature. Claude now lives inside Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook as native add-ins, and they share context across all 4. So you analyze data in Excel, move to a PowerPoint, and it already knows what you looked at. And then you can move to Word and it writes a whole report off the back of all that work. If your work lives in Microsoft Office, that one's worth installing on a paid plan. So far, it's just been you and Claude in a conversation. These last 2 tools are a bit different. This is where Claude goes off and does the work itself, and both of them live in the desktop app. The first is Cowork. It's a tab inside Claude Desktop, and it's a completely different category of tool. Where chat is a conversation, Cowork is delegation. It works directly on your computer for you. So a good example, you point it at a messy client folder, months of PDFs, screenshots, exports, total chaos. You give it one instruction, sort it by type, rename everything consistently, write me a summary of what's in there, then you go and make a coffee, come back, and it's completely done. It's also got scheduled tasks, so you can actually set work to run on a cadence. So a weekly client report, a Monday brief, anything that's recurring. And there's dispatch, which lets you fire tasks at it from your phone. So I can be between meetings and send a job and my desktop runs while I'm out of the room. If you're on a paid plan, after projects and skills, Cowork is the next best thing to set up. It's the point that Claude starts feeling like an actual member of your team. I've got a full video coming soon on Claude Cowork. And then there's Claude Code, the agentic coding tool. People assume it's for developers only, but it's much easier to get into than that. And you can build real things from day one. You literally have to just describe what you want in plain English. It reads your files, plans it, writes the code, tests it, and then ships it. The one habit that matters most when you start is plan mode. Before it touches anything, it reads everything, comes back with a plan, asks you questions, and waits for you to approve it. And that saves you hours of unpicking things that never needed to break. The other thing worth knowing is routines. You can set work to run on Anthropic servers on a schedule, even with your laptop shut. So overnight reviews, weekly checks, that sort of thing. I've also got a full video coming soon on how to get started with Claude Code. So there's loads in there, but the path is simple. Start with one project, build one skill inside it, plug in one connector that you actually use, and make sure to use the ICC and context in your prompts. That's the quickest route to getting actual value out of this. Once you've got a couple of skills running inside a project, you'll instantly notice how much more you can get out of Claude, and you won't have to go back to typing cold prompts every time. I'll see you in the next one.